righty. So thank you everybody for attending our monthly BWICR, Black Women in Clinical Research monthly career pathways event with myself, Tiffany Drummond, co-hosted by Courtney. Courtney, your name is Courtney Smith today, but I thought it was Courtney Troxy, but that's why I get confused. Okay, Courtney, who's my girl, is here with us as well. And we are going to be interviewing Zuena Easterling. Is that your last name? I want to make sure I say it right.
Yes, that's correct.
I want to make sure I say it right. And she is a medical information associate. And I will say it like, I mean, I knew I can deduce by definition what it was, but I really was like, I need to look this up. So I really do have a lot of questions for her today. And I want you all in the room, whether you are already in a clinical research position, whether you're looking for one, or whether you're thinking of maybe switching careers, this may be that conversation for you, right? And so I really want you to take note in what we're talking about today and get as much information from her as you can. And feel free to ask a question, because if you're asking it or thinking it, someone else is as well. So don't think there's any stupid questions when it comes to these type of events, okay? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just introduce myself. Again, my name is Tiffany Drummond. You may know me from Wind Down Wednesday if you come to Wind Down Wednesdays. I've hosted the career monthly events before. In my professional life, I did regulatory for quite some time in clinical research in the HEMONC space. And now I do more patient advocacy work and work with, doctors and patients and things like that. So I'm going to let Courtney introduce herself and then we'll move on to our guest. So Courtney, introduce yourself, my dear.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm Courtney, and yes, my last name is different because, as stated before, I recently moved, so I'm still kind of trying to figure myself out. And so I have tried to expand my communication and separate some things. So I had to start a new email account and all the things. So thank you all for your patience. And if you deal with me outside of here, any flubs we might have in the near future, but I'm trying to iron all those things out. So anywho, I am Courtney. I am a CRA with PPD, part of Thermo Fisher. I was focused on industry up until recently. I am now focused on government contract studies. So that has been fun and a new transition for me as well. And I've hosted before. I'm a host until I can't host no more. I want to see us grow and get better and turn this platform into something that is not just career discussions, but an all-encompassing discussion about research. So I'm here. I want to learn about medical information. I'm excited to be with Tiffany. I'm excited to be with Ms. Zoena. And I'm excited to be with every one of you who decided to join us today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. And if you just noticed, I pinned the people that are going to be talking the most, but after we get done with the conversation, we're definitely going to open it back up the gallery for any of you who want to come off camera and ask a question. Also, feel free to drop your questions in the chat throughout. I'll be looking there, Courtney will be looking there as well. So now the woman of the hour, Miss Zuena Easterling, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about you. And I always want an icebreaker, so give me one fun fact that we would not know about you.
Okay, so as stated, I'm Zuena Easterling. I am currently in Louisiana, not born but raised. I am a military brat, so I was actually born overseas. But I got my bachelor's degree in sociology at Louisiana State University. I graduated in 2019. And then I got my master's degree, surprisingly, in criminal justice from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. And I got that in 2021. So I'm still fairly young. I haven't even hit my 30s yet. I'm still just a baby. And let's see, what is a fun fact about me? I am a semi-retired pageant queen. That's my fun fact.
I wanted to be a pageant queen in my former life, and my mom and dad never put me in pageants. So send us all the pictures. I'm all about it. I would totally be like a pageant mom. I totally would be one of those. I totally would be. I would be a pageant mom. So thank you so much. And I like that. So I love what you said about, your journey, your educational journey, right? I tell anybody, you don't have to have a clinical background to be in clinical research or succeed. I myself don't have a clinical background either. And so it's one of those things where if you're passionate about something and you're dedicated and driven, you can succeed in anything, right? So I'm going to kind of kick some questions off to you. Since we're getting started at 7-Eleven, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But I'm going to start with the question I'm pretty sure everybody's asking. Can you explain what a medical information associate is?
Yes, so in my role as a medical information associate, it is a call center position. So I do talk to patients, healthcare providers, and other people who may be on the team as well. But we provide support and information related to pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and healthcare services. And typically, we're responsible for documenting inquiries and responses and making sure we stay in compliance with regulations and company policies. Of course, that's the most important thing here. And we're crucial in ensuring that all the information is accurate and reliable. And we really affect the decision making within the healthcare space regarding the products that have been brought to market. Oop, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. You kind of answered part of this question for me, but so my question is again, because you don't have a clinical background, but you are giving this information to healthcare providers and patients on, products that are on the market. I'm assuming pharmaceutical products that are on the market. What is that one onboarding process like for you? And is there a common inquiry that you get in general? Is it kind of use? Or is it like adverse events people are experiencing? Like, what's the most general questions that you get on the calls?
Yeah, so we get all kinds of inquiries regarding the product. I did see a question pop up. I am a medical information associate with PPD currently. I'm part of Thermo Fisher Scientific, just to throw that out there. And for our inquiries, I would say the inquiry that I get the most are definitely product complaints and adverse events, as well as inquiries about affordability on the products as well. So those are our most commonly received inquiries, at least on my project. Now, this may vary from project to project and depending on the therapeutic area, but for me, it's usually product complaints, adverse events, and affordability.
So tell me, so what's your training like when you got there, right? So kind of walk me through that part too, right? Where it's like, okay, how did you even come into this clinical research space? How did that happen?
So it's really funny. So my mom, well, let me back up a little bit. So how everybody kind of says you kind of fall into it is kind of true. And my mom has been in the industry. She is a principal CRA, and she's been in the industry for over a decade. And so I was graduating from college. And then, of course, the unthinkable COVID hit, and I had really no plans on staying in Louisiana. I was ready to go. But, clearly the plan was a little bit different, and I was kind of looking to pivot a little bit because I got to the end of my education and then I kind of realized, maybe I don't necessarily want to be as involved in the criminal justice space as I thought I wanted to do. And so the position did come up and, my mom encouraged me to apply for the position. Of course, I was a little bit apprehensive because I was just like, well, I don't have a clinical background. And so I don't know if I'd be a good fit. However, when I looked at the skills that I would gain and how transferable a lot of these skills are, I decided to give it a try. I applied, I got the job. And then when I started, if you are becoming an MIA with PPD, you first go through PPD's kind of training academy, and it's called the Medical Communications Academy, and that lasts about 2 weeks. And so they give you kind of the bare bones of what you'll be doing. And then from there, once you kind of get your general understanding of the policies, procedures, and what you'll be doing within the role, then you transition to your specialized training, which it looks different depending on which project you're on. But for my project, it was intensive. It was 6 weeks long, and it was a lot of reading, a lot of documents, a lot of, listening to calls to sharpen our skills on how to handle, a patient, a healthcare provider. What do we do in the event that, we get a difficult caller or there might be an emergency situation. And so it's a very, very thorough role. I was also afraid as well because I was just like, I don't really have a medical background, so how am I going to be able to speak to this accurately? But of course, PPD trains you very well, and they make sure that they make sure you cannot fail. And so that was kind of what the training was like for me, 2 weeks of Medical Communications Academy with PPD, then 6 weeks of really technical training with my project. And then from there, we had a week of shadowing. We call it mentoring, but essentially, we would listen to our mentor, take calls and ask questions and watch how they document. And then we would switch later on in the week, and then we'd start taking calls, and the mentors would listen to us and give us feedback and tell us kind of how to navigate the call flow. And then after that week, usually we fly solo, and it's not really as difficult as it may seem. It looks daunting, but as you get to really know your documents, you can really do this in your sleep.
I'm going to say one thing. One, you're very well spoken, and not that that means that you wouldn't be, but I can tell that you work at a call center because you
Yes.
speak very slowly. You're like, I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. I speak like, so one thing that you said that I want to really reiterate to the audience here is, again, one, she didn't have a clinical background. Two, her onboarding, it was very intensive. And I can say this for most CROs and most pharma companies, they do invest in training. So a lot of times it can be intimidating. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. Even with CRA work, right? You're like, I don't know all this. They don't want you to fail. They really don't, right? They're investing in you. And so they want you to be able to be your best self when they put you out there in those roles. And so for you to go through that in depth, thank you so much. For any of you out there who really might be like, I couldn't do that work. She literally just said, yes, you can. You can do it in your sleep after you go through this intensive training, right? Again, it really sounds interesting to me. And so when you're learning about these products, do they give you like the package insert, or is there like a PowerPoint slide, or how do you get the information about these products that you're going to be providing information on?
So it's really a mixture of both, studying our technical documents, and, also live trainings and PowerPoints and slides. And so it really is kind of a mixed media, if you will, with the training that way, for one, because it can get tedious. It can be a lot of reading, going over the documents. It can get very, very tedious, but they break it up by doing live trainings and other things to keep us engaged. And we do have access to the package inserts, and they also send us about halfway through training, the what is it called? The demo devices for us to actually see how the product that we're using works. Or if we're on a call and someone, needs help with the medication that they're using, or they're not quite sure, they might be a new user, we can actually look at our demo devices and actually walk through it with them. So we're actually looking at and seeing what they're seeing and making it as easy to understand as possible, and to make that a successful experience for them.
This really is fascinating to me. So my next question for you is, when you're on a call, is there ever an instance where you have to call them back? Like, how does that work? Or do they get another person if it's like, I'm going to escalate this to someone else, right? Do you ever have to escalate it to maybe a medical professional? Or can you say, I have to, we'll get back to you? Or how does that work?
Yes, so there are times where I do have to offer a callback. Sometimes, maybe the question that they're asking requires a little bit more research on my end to find a more thorough answer than I'm able to provide at the moment. And so sometimes I do have to let them know that I do have to conduct some more research so I can get some more information for them. And then sometimes I do have to escalate it to a medical professional, and so our medical professionals, like our nurses and our pharmacists who work within the call center, they are medical information specialists. So that's the distinction in the title. So if you don't necessarily have a medical background, you'll be a medical information associate. But if you do have a medical background, you'll be a medical information specialist.
That is a good distinction to know, because those of you out there who do have a clinical background and this sounds interesting to you, you may have another career path that you can go into as well. I'm pretty sure there's a ladder for this role, even for an associate. I'm pretty sure there's a ladder for that. So this leads to an interesting question. What can you describe a challenging medical information case that you got that stands out to you where you like, wow, that really took me for a loop, right? Do you have any like special, without giving us too much information, I know it's proprietary information, but anything that was so like, wow, out there that you could share with us?
So surprisingly, the patients and the healthcare providers that I talk to are great. That's another thing I can definitely say about my project. 98% of the people I talk to are very polite, very great. So it's really seldom ever you'll have like a difficult or a sticky call.
Mhm.
But one that stands out to me is when I had a patient who was particularly in distress, but I still had to do an adverse event report. And so the patient was very, very upset, and it was hard to understand her because, like I said, she was in distress. However, I was able to really show empathy and really take things slow and get an accurate documentation of her experience. And I was able to direct her to the proper the proper department to handle her adverse events and to make sure that she got that taken care of. And so it was a difficult case for me because, you really do have to have empathy in these situations because, sometimes the patients, they just want to know that, someone cares, and they just want to know that someone is listening to them, because we know all too well in healthcare that sometimes, people don't have their concerns genuinely listened to. And so that one was a case that stands out to me to this day. And I'm just really proud that I was able to keep my composure within the situation and that I was able to assist her and then properly guide her to get the adverse events taken care of as well.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm so sorry about the noise. For those of you who live in New York, we have buzzers that are loud and they scare you. So there was no alarm, but maybe someone was trying to get in the building, not for me. Thank you for explaining that, which leads me to my next question before I hand it over to my Courtney here with the remaining questions. This comes from a regulatory space, right? So when you're talking about talking to patients, adverse events, what are the ethical implications of that? Like how much private information are you getting from them? And how much access do you have to maybe their medical record, right? If I have an adverse event, are you going to have to ask me about any other medical history that I have, or how does that work?
So it really depends. Typically we don't have to delve too deeply into the medical history when it's just a simple product complaint. But if there is an adverse reaction involved, we only probe as much as they kind of give to us. So we don't have direct access to their medical records or anything like that. And most of the time, if they ask us for medical advice, that's one thing we can't give because we don't have their medical record. However, we can document anything that they provide to us. So if they've got some other pre-existing conditions, related conditions, or maybe something that kind of started once they began taking the medication, then we can document that. We usually take down a lot of demographics, email, address, because we do a full report to send to our safety and quality team. So we are handling quite a bit of confidential information. However, we can always, we also let the caller know that, you know, if they're not comfortable providing some piece of information, that, you know, they can also decline to provide that information as well. We just want to document their concerns as thoroughly as possible.
Thank you for giving that information. I always find that ethical, like I'm always in that ethical space. And so I just didn't understand as a medical information associate how you would get information. So you don't have access to like the medical record though, right? Like you're really like, right, okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. So those are the questions that I have for you. I could talk all day, but I'm going to hand it over to Courtney here, which I love your hair, Courtney, by the way. Did you dye it? It looks, I love the color.
So this is the color that I was doing this summer, and I fell in love. So she's a redhead now.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm going to hand it over to you. If I go off camera, it's only because I got to check downstairs in my building, but I am here and I am listening.
Okay. I'm gonna hold it down for you. So Zoena, so since we are already on the ethical track, excuse my dogs. I told you guys I just moved, so they're kind of freaking out too and still anxious. So I'm sorry, but since we're on the ethical track and you are taking information sometimes from patients or subjects regarding AEs or SAEs, which for those who don't know, we're talking about adverse events and serious adverse events. What information are you able to take from the person at that moment, and how are you reporting that information? Because on the research side, as a monitor, I know that the site is supposed to report that when they talk to the subject and get all the things, but where do you all fall in that process?
Yeah, so when it comes to patients, of course, we do try to collect as much demographic information as possible, or as the patient feels comfortable presenting to us. Typically, we also get pharmacy information, as well as who their healthcare provider is, especially when it involves adverse events. And then we have our own technical document that guides us depending on the scenario that applies to the patient, where we have a specific set of investigational questions that we ask them for the report. And then once we ask those investigation questions and really get a thorough picture of kind of what happened either with the product or with the adverse event, from there, we make sure everything looks accurate and thorough, and then we send it to our quality and safety team. And then from there, sometimes the quality and safety team may send us correspondence asking for clarification on something that was within the report. And so if they ask for clarification, then we provide clarification on that as well.
Awesome. And so you're filling that report. So what is the turnaround time for those reports?
So usually they call, and as you know, we're asking and talking, we're typing up the report. And typically I'm on the quicker end of the spectrum. So usually when it comes to a product complaint or an adverse event, for me, usually I'm finished with a report within 20 to 25 minutes, and then I'm submitting it to the quality team.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. Like showing just like how you can be more efficient. As a lot of times we can kind of get stuck and caught and distracted. And so if you're able to just kind of keep yourself on a path and just finish it out and just send it on, you don't have to worry about it anymore. That's great. Okay, so with your understanding of research, now that you have entered into the world of research, with your role, as you understand its inner workings, how do you feel that your role contributes to the overall success of research?
I think it contributes heavily to the overall success of research. Typically, we pretty much give information once the product has made it to market. And so kind of what we do and how we contribute to the success is making sure that this product that has made it to market is actually working. and, how it's affecting people, how, how well is it working? Or if it's a medical device, is there something we need to tweak? Are there safety issues? Are there things that need to change to make sure that it works a lot better? And so I always kind of joke that, whenever you watch the commercials for products on television and you hear that voice speeding through all the side effects at the end of the commercial, we contribute to them being able to tell you what all those side effects are. And so I think that's a pretty significant contribution to the success of research.
I agree. And it is funny when you hear the end. My mom used to always joke about how, why would I want to take medicine that gives me all those symptoms if I'm, and it's like, no. It's not that it's going to give you all of those symptoms. It's just that this is something that someone somewhere experienced during the research process of this thing. And so it's like, be on the lookout for it. But it is funny, and it does make you feel good because it's like, oh yeah, I reported that. So okay. So how do you find yourself having to deal with a lot of regulatory changes, like having to have the information for that? And I know you speak to providers as well, correct? So
Yes.
okay, so do you find yourself having to stay up on regulatory changes, and how are you all able to stay up on that?
So we actually have content update meetings, I want to say monthly, because the information is always being updated. Things are always changing. And so they definitely want to make sure here again that we're prepared for success. And so we have those monthly content update meetings. Sometimes it might be as short as a 10-minute meeting. Sometimes it might be a 2 or 3 hour meeting, depending on the updates that have been made to the documents and to the protocol. So things are always changing. I can definitely say that even within the last year, I've been in my role for 2 years. Things didn't change too much that first year, but this second year, it's like something is always changing. Just when you think you're getting used to a process or a protocol, here comes a content update and here comes a change. And so you really have to be adaptable and just really kind of roll with it, because that's really the nature of research. Something is always subject to change.
Absolutely. Staying flexible is very important, especially nowadays with just the world, how the world is working. But specifically in research, because science is ever turning. It is so crazy how fast science can just change. So in your experience over the last 2 years, what would you say are some of the challenges and rewards that you have had in your role?
So some of the challenges would be, even though I've gotten used to it now, dealing with complex information, because some people, they can soak it in and understand it, and sometimes it might take a little bit of repetition and really putting the information into practice for it to really kind of make the light bulb go off. Um, Sometimes also another challenge can be a high volume. Lately, we've had, excuse me, a pretty low volume, but whenever it gets hectic, it can be a little bit stressful, because literally as soon as you get off a call and you're finishing documentation, wrap up your documentation and here comes another call, or you may look in the queue and you see it's like 64 callers waiting, and it can be overwhelming. But the important thing about that is you can only take it one call at a time. And so that has really been my saving grace, is that I can only take one call at a time. And so when I see that 64, that 100, that 25, it really kind of translates to one, because I can only take one at a time. And then I would say another challenge may be the emotional toll, because sometimes, patients are scared. They can be, upset, not necessarily at you, but at the situation. And if you're particularly not having a good day and somebody else is not having a good day, and then y'all come together and you're not having a good day, it can, you know, take a toll on you. But the important things about that is to kind of take a step back, breathe, or take a quick walk, take a sip of water, you know, kind of really ground yourself and remind yourself that, you know, they're just looking for answers and it's not personal. Even though sometimes it may feel personal. On the flip side, the rewards include the impact. Being able to help people every day is my favorite part of my job, because everybody's just, they're so nice and they're so grateful whenever you're able to provide them what they're looking for, whether it's troubleshooting a medical device or just providing them with information that they've been looking for and that they've maybe, you know, haven't been able to find online, or their doctor, you know, maybe doesn't have the information. And so being able to help people every day, that's something that I love doing. And then the continuous learning. You're always learning something. There's always something new. No 2 days are alike. Just today I was, you know, mentoring with a couple of mentees, and one of my mentees got a call that even I had never gotten before. And so we got to navigate that together. And that was super duper fun, because, you know, not only does she know what to do for the next time, but now I know what to do as well. And so it's very rewarding being able to always be in a mode to learn.
I do agree. You do find, no matter what role you are in research, I feel like you always find yourself being in an investigatory type of space. Like you always have to dig deeper into something for something. And so you're forced to get out of your comfort zone. You're never able to really sit and settle. So that's one of the things that I like about research as well. I don't like anything mundane, and there is nothing mundane about anything in this industry. So we have a lot of questions for you in the chat. Okay. So I'm going to stop with the nonsense and the money. Well, no, actually, I wanted to ask one more question because, you know, I'm going to be a little selfish. So since you've been in your role, there have been a lot of technological advancements, oddly enough. Are you all able to utilize systems like AI to assist you in your role day to day?
So I think as far as the AI is concerned, I'm sure that's coming down the pipeline, because AI definitely, excuse me, is a part of everything that we touch. So it hasn't quite trickled into the work that we do just yet, but I am so certain that it's coming. We've definitely improved the use of, you know, our digital platforms, working on new apps to, you know, reach people where they are, and just new ways to reach people, whether that be via social media or just different platforms. And so even though the AI hasn't quite made its way in, I can't wait to see when it does. I can't wait to see how that improves our role in the space.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes as well, because, you know, you can pull information so quickly with AI. But regardless of being able to do that, you still have to have a person to know how to pull the information and to know how to like whittle it down for the person to understand. So when I bring up AI, I want to bring up AI in a sense of where people are no longer afraid of it, where we're able to embrace it, we're able to like really view it as an accessory, not as a replacement, you know? So now that I've gotten that off my chest, sorry. Now I can go to the questions in the chat. This one, I was trying to start at the very top, and I don't know if this is the very first one that came in, but this one I like, because we do work for the same company, so I know how things go. How does the company measure your performance metrics? Are you required to assess a specific number of patients per hour? answer that how you will. I'm going to go on mute and then I'm going to whittle these down. Any other person who might have a question, please feel free as Zawena answers to put it in the chat or to raise your hand to come off mute and ask your own question.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we don't have to assess a certain amount of patients per hour because the call flow is different every day. So I'll tell you, like Mondays and Tuesdays are our busiest days. And then as the week goes on, those calls start to drop off. So you might take 10 to 20 calls on a Monday, and by Friday, you might take 5. It also really depends on what type of calls you're getting that day. Like if you're getting a bunch of product complaints and adverse events, that documentation is more involved than maybe an affordability request or just a simple inquiry. And so that documentation takes 20 to 25 minutes, whereas like a simple question might take like 5 minutes. And so it really hinges on several different factors, but there isn't a requirement to assess a certain amount of patients every day, just as long as it's more of adhering to your schedule and just being efficient with your time really is the metric per se, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. Thank you for answering that. And that, Lord, I'm sorry. But that is interesting, how you put that, because I can see where it would be kind of difficult to measure that and your ability to search and get answers answered quickly and turn over your reports. So, okay, that's interesting. So I'm going to turn it back over to Tiffany, who is going to pull questions from the chat.
Absolutely. So you got your work cut out for you, okay? Because these are some good that are coming in hot, okay? One, how can someone prepare for a role in med info? And I think we kind of discussed this at the beginning, top of the hour, because again, you said yourself, you don't have a clinical background. So even for someone who does or doesn't, how do you think we can prepare for this type of role if we're going to be applying for it?
So I know for me, even prior to this role, I was in some public facing roles where I did have to communicate with people a lot. So it made it kind of really easy to kind of transition into this role. But I would just say, put yourself in a position to talk to more people, to talk to people who you might not interact with, because that's exactly what you'll be doing. I would say to sharpen your communication skills. And to if you're not a reader, I would definitely say, start kind of getting yourself in that mode and kind of getting yourself in more of a research mode, because that's what you'll be doing to pull your documents and things like that. So I would say to kind of prepare for the role, just to familiarize yourself kind of with technology, because it does come with a technology requirement. You will have to be familiar with at least your Microsoft Office suite, and then they'll train you on the specific software, but at least, have kind of a basic understanding of, your technology. Definitely increase those communication skills, because that is the biggest part of this, written and verbal, because you'll be doing a lot of reports and you'll be talking a lot as well. And then of course increase your kind of sharpen your research skills and your technical skills with documents. And so, if you're reading a newspaper article or reading something, kind of analyze it and, pick out the parts that are important, just little things like that, that sometimes you might not even think of, or you think, I haven't had to do this since school. Little things like that will help you a lot and go a long way in this role. And yes, Control F is your friend. It has saved me many times.
Right, right. I can say just as regulatory, I know when I go into a doctor's office, I am always thinking of regulatory, like why do I see this name? Why are you calling my whole government? I'm always doing that when I go to an office. So yes, I can understand where in your role, you find yourself in your everyday life, incorporating your own role into that. Now, this next question, I feel like is kind of subjective, but I'm going to ask anyway. So, and you don't have to give your personal, of course, but what is the salary range for medical information specialists or associates? But I will say and preface this with everyone, every job you get really depends on your geographical location. So the same role in a different location could give you a different range. So that's why you really want to make sure that you know what it is in your area or geographical area. But if you can kind of give us a range of what you think would be like, if I had to give a range, I would give this. Maybe
Yeah,
starting
so
out or
Yeah, so starting out, the range would be $20 to $25 an hour. And like Tiffany said, it may vary depending on your locality, as well as your experience. So if you have a medical background, you might start out a little bit higher as a medical information specialist, than you would as a medical information associate. However, there is a lot of room for growth there, so that wouldn't be a concern.
Okay, and you're not remote. Are you in a call center, like on-site call center? Or
So
you
I am remote. Lately, the hiring that they've been doing have been more hybrid. They've kind of paused remote hiring for the time being, but I kind of slipped in there, kind of one of the last hiring classes that they were still doing fully remote.
That's good to know, right? That's good to know because there are some call center positions that are remote. But for this particular one, I think I was just looking online when I was learning about this role. A lot of the ones I saw were on site, and they said you had to be within this location locally to be able to apply for the job. Let's see here, something else. Is this position team focused or is it more independent? I get independent, but you do have mentees that you work with, so maybe it's a team thing. So what do you think about that?
It's a good mix of both. But I feel like it's probably a little bit more team focused because you might get a caller calling with, a follow up to the original concern, and you might have to send a message to the original agent that worked on the case, or another agent might be, contacting you to get some additional information so that they can kind of fit the pieces of the puzzle together to finish up their case. We are very team focused in the sense that I'm also on some other teams. I am on the daily running reports team. I do assist with the clarifications. So if a colleague gets a clarification and they're not quite understanding what the quality team is asking for, I'm kind of one of the go-to people that they come to, like, hey, I'm not really sure what they're asking for. Can you kind of clarify this clarification for me? And I'm also on one of the affordability teams as well that delves a little bit deeper than our general affordability inquiries. So there are a lot of opportunities, and I'm also a mentor. So there are a lot of opportunities. It is very team based, and then some days, depending on the day and depending on the calls, you might not hear from a colleague or you might not need to reach out to a colleague. So it really varies from day to day and week to week, depending on what you're assigned to and the calls that come in.
Which brings me to another good question someone asked in here. So because you're remote, it may be a little different, but what are the operating hours of medical information associates and specialists? Because I would assume someone could call anytime with any kind of issue. So what are your hours like, but what are the hours of the actual entire department of medical information department?
So for our department specifically, we're 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But then there are like other departments that maybe deal with, affordability. They're open from 9 to, I believe, 7 or 8 p.m. So depending kind of on where you are within that, the hours can vary. I know some of my colleagues who have a 4-day work week, they work from, I think, 9 to 6 or 7. So they work 4 10s, but most of the team is 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
That was a very good answer for that because I didn't know how that worked with remote. So those are pretty much all the questions that we had in the chat. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, go on. You can drop it in the chat. You can totally come off mute if you want to. You don't have to raise your hand. Just come off mute and say what you feel. I do want to, thank you for taking the time this evening, kind of last minute for all of you listening to last minute to come on here and really give us some information about a role that really isn't known like that, right? And I do tell people all the time, I dropped in the chat what other names you might see these roles as at other positions, or even on sites, you might see it as medical records associate, a medical records specialist. But also that, that this role, even if you put in clinical research, you might come across, a medical information associate, right? But I really have never come across that. So I didn't really know it existed. And for you to come from such a diverse background as well, I think a lot of that shows your drive, and your dedication to your work and your work ethic, right? Because you could say, I don't want to do this, but you're like, no, I'm going to do this, right? And so for me, my question is, I know you're kind of new to the game because you just got this work history, girl. Your professional experience probably shorter than mine on my resume, but what do you want for yourself, and what do you see your career trajectory going? Do you see it maybe staying in this space, or do you want to explore outside of that? Because PPD does have other career paths as well. So what do you see for yourself?
So I tell people all of the time, this is actually a very good foot in the door to start getting yourself introduced to really the basics of being in clinical research. And this has been a wonderful foot in the door for me. I've learned things that I never thought I would learn. And although there's growth in this particular career path, I would actually like to venture out and do something more, hopefully become a CRA at some point, because I really do enjoy the work that I do, and it's just so very interesting to me. So I'm really hoping to branch out and explore, something else within the clinical research field as well.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. So do you have like a manager? So let's say that I'm a clinical research associate, not clinical research, medical information associate, and I want to kind of stay in this lane, right? But I don't have a clinical background. So I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe based on my experience, if I do it long enough, I might be able to, get promoted to a specialist. But what do you see for yourself in terms of, okay, if I'm an associate, what's my career path? Like, would it be maybe a manager of medical information associates? What does that look like, in terms of growth within your position?
Yes, so I am in MIA 1, and I think they have up to 3. So they have an MIA 1, 2, and 3. And then from there, I believe you can then explore going into management within medical communications. And then from there, we're looking into directors and things like that. And they're very open, they really see your drive and your passion for it. Like, my manager recommends me for stuff all the times, and sometimes I do have to turn it down because it can get to be a lot, and I don't want to stretch myself too thin to where I can't maintain the standard of excellence. But if you really show your passion and your drive, like, you really won't have to ask for anything. Like, your manager will just kind of put you forward for stuff. And it's amazing because I'm always getting to try something new. And she's always suggesting things to me that, I didn't even think of within the space. I was just like, oh, I didn't know that I could do this or that. And so those are that's kind of the career ladder with the MIA.
Perfect. Thank you. So one of my last questions because Courtney, I felt like I just took over the last of the questions here. I would like to know if I would be able to drop your LinkedIn in the chat for anyone who wants to connect with you. So for any of you, thank you so much. I want to make sure before I drop it, because I was about to drop it in there, girl. Like, here's LinkedIn. But so yeah, for any of you who really are interested, we always talk about networking. LinkedIn networking is how you really are going to make that connection, right? Especially in a role that you may not be familiar with, or it's not that many positions out there. So I already copy and pasted it. So I'm gonna drop it in there right now. So her LinkedIn is in the chat. So I'm really going to just kind of open it up. We got like 5 minutes. Again, I think this has been a wonderful last minute career event that we put together literally in like 24 hours. Okay. And to have this big turnout is really, really great. So thank you all for coming through. Courtney, you have any last words that you like to say, my dear?
I actually do. So I've been thinking, because y'all know my wheels are always turning and I'm always Googling or researching whatever. So roles that could align with this particular role as a entry stepping stone type thing: medical writing, regulatory, that is, site initiation, pre-site things, management, of course, contracts, because a lot of time with contracts, you need someone who has a criminal justice or a, law aligned degree, experience, whatever, to be able to make sure all of the things work how they're supposed to work monetarily. There are so many different avenues for you all. There's so many different things that can correlate and connect. You just got to find your way in. And when you find your way in, that is when you pick your passion and you go from there. Okay? So I hope you all enjoyed this career information session. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to drop it in the chat. Zoena's link in LinkedIn is here for networking purposes. Please feel free to reach out to her. If she has the bandwidth, she will answer you. If she does not, please do not harass her, okay? She will get to you when she can. She just told us that she's a very busy lady.
That is true. I've harassed her enough over the last 48 hours. So give her like at least a day or two.
Yes.
A day or two.
She will reach out. So everybody, I hope this was as good for you as it was for me.
Yes, it was absolutely amazing. So I'm gonna, again, I'm gonna give everybody back 2 minutes of their time. Zoena, again, thank you so much. It was great speaking with you. Thank you. I think we've all learned a lot here. Good luck and much success to you in the roles and the continued future that you're going to have in clinical research. I can't wait to see all the great things you do. But I'm going to hang back a little bit, guys, for you all to make sure you get her LinkedIn, or if you have any other questions for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Otherwise, have a wonderful, wonderful evening and a greater weekend.